get going. So as I say, good morning everybody. This Wednesday webinar is about the benefits, or explaining the benefits behind building an eco-home. I think more and more people increasingly kind of understand what a low energy or sustainable building is, but I think sometimes beyond maybe lower running costs and maybe doing something better for the planet, it can sometimes get a bit sticky for design professionals and teams who are trying to explain the benefits to their clients, but also for the end clients themselves to understand what the benefits are. And there's a mix here, and as I'll touch on, it's not just financial benefits that we're talking about. There's also other aspects to it as well. And what this webinar attempts to do is to walk you through those and really give you some real food for thought. So depending on what position you're in, whether you're in a client or whether you're in a position where you're selling to clients or talking to clients or trying to bring the clients in the great design idea that you've got, these are all the ideas that we could think of and that we've come across and we've used ourselves, which are legitimate reasons and benefits behind kind of moving away from kind of traditional building to something more sustainable, or dare I say eco. So for those who haven't been with us before, for the benefit of the newcomers, I'll just spend a couple of minutes explaining who Mesh Energy are. We've got a practice of about 9 people. We're actually based in Farnham, but our staff are reasonably far-flung around the home counties. We are an independent energy consultancy practice, and fundamentally we work with design teams and clients to understand, what a client's measure of success is, and what hoops may have to be jumped through from a regulatory point of view, and pool all our experience to help with everything from initial concept design and thermal analysis, looking at feasibility studies, help designing systems, help sometimes on site, and getting government subsidies at the end. So we're quite a holistic practice. We're independent. We're not sponsored by any manufacturer. We're just pooling all our resource and knowledge to your particular project, and we're trying to simplify it. It's a pretty complicated world out there, and this is no exception. Some of the best projects simply need simplifying to get there, and we can help to do that and tick all the key boxes along the way to increase the chances of success for your particular project. So onto the webinar here. We all love a dictionary definition, and I think it's worth explaining. But when we talk about the word benefit, it's worth just understanding what that means. So essentially, the dictionary definition for benefit is an advantage or profit gained from something. A lot of us, there are some who tend to focus on the profit aspect, but actually the wider advantages under the umbrella of benefit can touch on other areas, and it would be remiss of me to just do a webinar on money. Money does make the world go round in many respects, but there are a whole load of other, let's call them kind of soft reasons why, when you're entering into discussions with clients, or if you're a client yourselves, that are worth looking at beyond just money. So by way of an introduction, that's benefit kind of covered off as a word. But most people kind of come at kind of benefits of a project. And when they think about a project, when they think about spending money, essentially, we're all reasonably selfish, and we're thinking, what's in it for me? How do I put myself in a better position if I make a change which might be necessarily kind of out of the ordinary? We make hundreds, if not thousands, of these decisions every single day, and a sustainable low energy building is a particularly big one. And so clients and design teams often need some pretty robust answers when they're thinking of, as I say, changing the status quo or doing something that may potentially cost less in the first instance to do some other standard way. And I think it's worth understanding. I kind of started with this as a really kind of simple graphic, and it's worth understanding a customer's decision-making process and how we all naturally progress through decision making and making a decision, and where benefits fit into that. Because once you understand where benefits fit in, it helps you, obviously talk about those at the right stage, rather than preempting or forcing something onto a particular client. And likewise, it means that you don't leave it too late and decisions have already been made in the decision-making process. So this was a really, really kind of simple graphic that I could use to describe that. So every customer, or even yourself, the first thing that we're talking about is kind of need recognition. So is there a known kind of hole or need requirement for the service that you're offering, or for something that you're about to purchase? And increasingly, this kind of wider information search phase starts. So if you're working with maybe a contractor, you might look them up on LinkedIn, you might look at the website, you might read some blogs that they've done, you might talk to them, you might speak to others that have used those. If it's a particular product, again, you might go on Which, you might have a look on the internet, you might look at customer reviews. And so increasingly, we're doing more and more search to make sure that kind of risk is reduced. And it's in the evaluation phase, once you've done this information searching, that benefits and risks for, as I say, yourself or a client this is where it gets red hot. And this is where it's really important in this evaluation phase to make sure that the client fully understands everything that they need to before finally making a kind of a purchase decision, or simply a decision. It might not be a purchase decision, it might be some other kind of decision. And it's the benefits and risks, and this is where we're going to focus in this evaluation phase, which are absolutely critical. And the problem is, if you don't, you may have, just thinking about if I was an architect, I may have the world's most amazing design, but if you can't properly convey the benefits of a particular strategy, maybe it's a passive house, let's just choose the term passive house. Maybe there's a whole load of benefits, but if the client just sees that it's an expensive way to get a low energy building, that may not be enough for them. But if you could talk to them about quality of life, or air quality, or low running costs, or impact on the planet, or some other financial or emotional benefit, that may tip them over the edge. And it's critical to make sure that you've got your act together and you've got the full suite of benefits and understanding the risks at that stage. You may not use all of them, but it's critical to understand what that list is. And then you go on to purchase, and obviously post-purchase evaluation. So benefits, there are two aspects to benefits. There are the emotional aspects, or emotional benefits of any decision, and then there are the financial aspects. And whilst many people may gravitate to one particular aspect, and financial considerations are always taken into mind, invariably, benefits and purchasing decisions and the reason that we make choices are often driven by irrational emotional reasons. And we've all been in a situation where we bought something and it may be too expensive, or it may be ridiculously not value for money, but our emotional drivers have made us make that purchase, and we've kind of forgotten about some of the financial implications, because the emotional benefits or time-related benefits have outweighed those of simply how much money we've got in our pocket. In other situations, we can park our emotions and we're just looking at the numbers, or we might just be looking at return on investment. And it really depends on the client. But both of these benefits must be touched upon to fully grasp yourself what the benefits are of low energy buildings, as well as your clients. So this is just a really kind of a high level overview. So we've got a couple of slides on clients and architects, and then we'll go into the detail here. So we're going to be talking about, from a client point of view, we've got emotional and personal reasons for building low energy projects. And this revolves around reducing your carbon footprint, environmental air quality, improved kind of material efficiency, better health and well-being, reduced strain on local resources, a bit more touchy-feely. And the financial side of it for clients revolves around capital cost, how much it actually costs to build that building, compared to, say, a standard non-eco home. Maintenance and operation costs, fuel cost resilience, what money you get from the government, and kind of higher desirability and property value as well. You know, if you're a developer, you may be looking at it from a marketing point of view, desirability point of view, and that's the financial side for a client that they may be strongly considering also. If you're an architect or part of the design team, you're looking at it in a slightly different way. You're looking at it about, you know, how great you feel about the work that you're doing, helping others. You're designing healthier and more comfortable buildings. You're doing your bit to reach carbon neutrality, which is a kind of an industry and a UK and a European, and in some cases a kind of a worldwide target. Advancing your technical abilities, and you know, we're touching on professional responsibility as well as a leading professional. Financially or commercially, we're looking at an opportunity for education of yourself personally, as well as potentially your team, and upskilling that, keeping up to date with competition, being able to attract better and more aspirational customers and staff in the same breath. There are marketing opportunities there for your practice I'm talking about here, so better case studies, more relevant content and more relevant buildings that you think will allow you to get more inquiries and conversions of projects, helping you retain or maybe even create a competitive advantage that you didn't have before. Maybe you're looking at a particular niche of low energy buildings, which is exciting to you and nobody else is offering. And the long and the short of it is about charging higher fees potentially as well and making your business more profitable. So really quick, we're going to be looking at clients and architects or design professionals for the rest of the presentation. So if we rewind back to clients in this particular instance, carbon footprint has been talked about a lot and will continue to do so. Embodied carbon, if you've been on our REBA 2030 webinar series, embodied carbon is a segment of the REBA 2030 target, and I think it's finally sinking in that our carbon footprints and the embodied carbon in the materials in which we're using in our buildings and in our lives is increasingly becoming important in order to reduce those. And I guess one of the biggest things over the last couple of years has been obviously the reduction in usage of plastic bags. That's affected everybody's lives. It may seem fairly trivial, but these are the kind of things that we're talking about houses in one instance, and reduction in wastage and materials, and very closely related to that is reducing our carbon footprints and looking at better material efficiency. And for the clients, it's this kind of warm, cozy feeling when you're talking about this. It's this kind of feel-good feeling. And I'm sure everybody that comes in through our door, generally speaking, wants to do their part. They may focus on money and the other things, but we're looking at kind of high-level emotional reasons here. So leaving the planet in a better place for the next generation, protecting family, particularly those with families or dependents. We often hear that stated when you drill down into the reasons that people are building low or sustainable buildings. It often comes down to, I want to create this great environment for my family, and I want to do my bit for future generations. And I think it's this, even though some people may perceive their particular house or particular contribution to reducing carbon a small one, I think people appreciate that it's better than doing nothing at all, and very much so when you're looking at the built environment, it's very much a lasting contribution, and no one person is going to solve the problem here. So this kind of empowerment of reducing your own little carbon footprint in your own way is really sinking in, and there's a benefit to many, because again it creates this sense of kind of feel good at quite a kind of philosophical, basic human level. And the other final thing to say on this is about community. There are carbon neutrality targets for Europe, for the UK. Local councils are trying to commit, businesses are trying to commit. And what this eventually boils down to is this affecting individual towns, villages, hamlets, clusters of houses, and this sense of community kind of coming together and again doing their own little bit, which builds up to a much bigger impact. It is quite a nice warm fuzzy benefit, which we've seen come up, and certainly something to get your clients thinking about in the future. Difficult to quantify, but does tick a number of boxes for those kind of softer benefits. And when we're talking about community again, if an individual building or an individual client can build a low energy building or a lower energy building, maybe they've got rainwater harvesting, or maybe they've got some solar panels on the roof and things like that. Ultimately what we're talking about is reducing the strain on local resources as well. And again, that's kind of doing your bit. You know, if you can reduce your usage and wastage of materials and natural resources, and your neighbour does the same, and other people in the community start doing that, it means that the resources that are there that are being distributed can go further. So the second one is about enhanced indoor environment quality, and this is becoming a really, really big factor. We're certainly seeing clients with more health issues come across our doors. I did a project with a client a couple of years ago, and she was very, very severely affected by volatile organic compounds and kind of man-made chemicals to a very, very extreme level. And at that point, 2 years ago, that was a kind of a standout extreme case. But again, we all know problems with individuals. There are, maybe allergies or eczema and these other kind of health implications, which more and more people seem to be more fragile. And essentially building a home which uses sustainable materials, responsibly sourced materials, less man-made chemicals and glues, formaldehyde and things like that, again, all help to improve indoor environment quality. And this comes down to ventilation as well. So there's some mechanical aspects of it, as well as some materials aspects of it. And ventilation, again, we've done a webinar on overheating. Ventilation is a really, really critical part of keeping building thermal comfort to a manageable level as our climate increases, and we put more energy into cozier, better insulated buildings. And also the ability to kind of let fresh air into the building as well, letting the environment in, again, is a really, really, really good tick box. So rather than relying on technologies, using passive ventilation techniques, using mechanical ventilation techniques, and using more kind of natural materials in a building, or at least being aware that less man-made chemicals are being used, again, all tick benefit boxes for clients who may be more sensitive to that. And that really is across the whole spectrum, whether you're sensitive to volatile organic compounds or chemicals or not. A well-ventilated building just leads to a better quality of life for the clients. And that final bullet point kind of covers off the VOC thing as well, about natural materials. So looking at kind of more financial aspects of low energy buildings, as well as kind of some of those softer environmental or kind of feel-good benefits of building low energy buildings, very, very quickly you come to cost, and this can really switch people off very, very quickly. We're doing a webinar next week on no added cost, and essentially walking you through the costs of better insulated buildings and showing you that there is next to no premium on building a low energy house compared to a standard home. And I think with more intelligent design, you can confidently say to clients that their budgets don't need to double in size in order to build a low energy home. And compared to just doing something to building regulations, that the financial and emotional benefits and quality of life benefits can be vastly improved without really digging deep into your pocket. the advancement in building construction methodologies has allowed for better quality, quicker on-site construction, and that's allowed you to reduce some of the costs associated with low energy homes compared to standard ones. And there's a whole load of different, say, advances in technology, products, methodologies, and even just better upfront design before you get onto site. More commitment there from the design team helps to reduce overall cost and finishing work on site quicker, which invariably brings the cost down as well. So all of these things, again, can be explained. Every single project will be, of course, totally unique, but just debunking the myth that low energy projects cost a small fortune to build compared to less low energy projects is definitely something worth focusing on and getting your QS and design team involved as an earlier stage as possible. This next benefit, which is about low operational cost, is often a reason why people are interested in low energy buildings. It may not be clear to them that lower maintenance is a benefit, but lower operational cost, low running costs or zero running costs are kind of the holy grail. So to be able to confirm that benefit with the client is always a good one, and quantifying it, getting some numbers down. It's one thing talking about it, it's another thing quantifying it. The other thing to explain as important to the clients is, even though renewable technologies to some may seem like some newfangled, kind of mystical thing to be putting into their building, and there are more systems and there are more moving parts potentially, in many respects, there's no more maintenance required than an oil or a gas boiler, particularly when it comes to heating and hot water systems. Kind of annual maintenance of renewable systems is pretty standard, and annual maintenance of oil and gas systems is pretty standard. There's slightly fractionally more work looking at a ground source heat pump than an air source heat pump system, but generally speaking, you can. That is a benefit because it's not an ongoing added cost to a low energy sustainable project. One of the big wins is that, even conservatively, 10 or 30% running cost reductions can be achieved. Even if you built a passive house or a next to net zero energy home, you may get down to low hundreds of pounds. But generally speaking, getting running costs to half of what they were if you built something to building regs is not unheard of at all, and not particularly tricky. So again, being able to confirm that benefit for clients is great. The other thing to consider as well is, and this often isn't picked up by clients, is future fuel cost resilience. And whilst none of us have got a crystal ball, you guys have got as much chance of guessing what the future fuel costs will be as I do. Oil, LPG, and even mains gas costs will rise. Simply because they're finite resources. And other technologies, electricity, we have ways of everybody producing electricity. Electricity on the national grid has been decarbonised massively by the work being done by offshore wind farms, and also on land, big solar arrays, and those continue to be put on. So there's massive strides that have been made to decarbonise the electricity network, and now we have technologies like heat pumps, as I say, solar panels, battery technology, and other technologies, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery that use electricity. There is no need to rely on deliveries of oil, LPG, or even have mains gas piped into your home, and the costs are, in almost all cases, cheaper than running those fossil fuels, even mains gas, for a new build property. So the decentralisation of our infrastructure in the UK, as well as some really, really big renewable projects, will mean that if a client does use renewable technology, which is highly likely to be using electricity as its primary fuel source, there will come a point where our electricity network is essentially zero carbon. That will never be the case for oil, LPG, or mains gas. So again, giving them some idea that those looking ahead to cheaper cost fuels, which we don't rely on Russia, the rest of Europe for, is would be a big benefit for clients. The other biggie as well for clients on the financial side is government subsidies. So we've got the Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme, which again, if you've seen our webinar about introduction to renewables, or done some simple Googling on subsidies, or maybe you've had projects which have used renewable technology, these subsidies domestically are paid out for 7 years. They're tax-free, and you can get up to £32,000 per household if you put in ground source heat pumps into the property. Commercially, you get paid for 20 years. You do pay tax on that, but you get paid for 20 years. And the subsidies are unlimited. For the domestic scheme, they're limited. Commercially, they're unlimited. So you can get hundreds of thousands of pounds or even millions of pounds under that scheme if it's eligible. You've also got the standard export guarantee, which is for solar photovoltaic systems. So the feed-in tariffs that were around for a decade are now well and truly gone. But if you generate electricity and export electricity from a building, there are various network operators now and supply companies which will pay you a small amount of money for exporting that electricity. Of course, your biggest return on investment for clients is to use that electricity at source, or maybe even use a battery to store it for use later on site. But for others who do export electricity, there is also some money that you can get for exporting energy that a property generates. And one of the other benefits is if you put in renewable technology, if it's for a new build, it's 0%, but if it's for an existing property, maybe you're doing a refurbishment or something like that, there is only 5% VAT on most technology. They have got a bit funny about some of the VAT, but generally speaking, it's 5% VAT compared to 20% for retrofit projects. And then finally, for clients, this should be a big one, who maybe aren't going to be in the house forever, and they are maybe going to sell it. Is I mean, it's been proved that properties that have low energy technologies installed on them, solar panels, heat pumps, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, and cost less to run, are more desirable. In fact, there was a report written 7 years ago that proved that properties that had an A or a B EPC rating sold for 5% higher than buildings that had a C or a D rating. And I think even buildings that had a C or a D rating sold for 2% more than those that had an E or an F or a G rating. Obviously, most new builds are around the kind of the C, B or A mark, but there has been direct correlation between energy ratings of buildings and property value. Rental properties could be more profitable for clients. Maybe you've got a client who's doing a second home or a rental property. If the running costs are less, there's an opportunity to make more money. They can charge the tenants a fixed rate, or maybe even lower rent, so they fill those slots faster. And also, there is huge desirability from millennials. This term millennials, which is used for obviously the kind of next generation coming through. This is really important to them. Buildings, homes, maybe their first home, maybe the second home. It's really important that, it's got renewable tech in, it's low energy to run, maybe it's built out sustainable materials. Those kinds of things will appeal to that newer, fresher market kind of coming through and buying buildings. And there is also a final point in there about, there is the potential as well, is if you continue to develop buildings with, oil, gas, LPG in them, even though you might scrape by your EPC rating or your SAP calculations if it's a new build, increasingly it's going to be highly likely that there will essentially be a carbon tax. So whether you're selling the building or buying the building, there will be a premium on stamp duty or some kind of carbon tax, because you are essentially supporting a building that is using fossil fuels rather than something more renewable. And I'm not quite sure which way that's going to fall, but it's likely that this decade that will come in and penalise those who aren't embracing this new technology. So for architects, let's have a think about architects. So I focused on architects here, but look, this is about wider design professionals. Architects are a key part of the transaction and building design. That's why we focused on architects. But there are some specific benefits here which you can. Some of them are similar to client benefits, but actually the vast majority you can open up to your team and think about how you're running your business or working within a wider team, the benefits for you guys. So again, kind of coming back to the emotional side of benefits here, is this kind of feeling great about the work that you're doing. I mean, increasingly we're seeing this practices and the coronavirus break or lull or opportunity or change in direction that coronavirus has caused. We know that practices have taken stock during that time, thought about what I'm talking to you guys about today and what they're going to do with sustainable buildings, and figured out what their priorities are and really had to think about what their core purpose is as a practice. Do they continue saying yes to clients who aren't embracing sustainability? Do they say yes to everybody? Do they say no to select people? And how are they reorganizing their practice? What are the kind of the new staff that they're looking for, and what do they say in their literature and marketing to reflect that how people view them, but also how they can more confidently feel great and talk about the work that they're doing. And I've talked about this this why in previous talks, particularly one around the book that I read. And this, I'm not going to pretend this is my idea. A guy called Simon Sinek, who does a lot of business speaking and inspirational speaking, very, very popular chap, written a number of books. But his concept of the golden circle is really, really fundamental. And a lot of us spend our time talking about how and what we do in our practices. And very few of us talk about why we do what we do in our practices. And although it takes some really, really in-depth thinking, can be very, very enlightening when we properly get to the nub of why we're doing things. And if we understand that, the architects understand that, then your clients can understand that. You can explain that in more detail in marketing. And increasingly, the purpose of a business and the mission for a business is becoming, in some respects, one of the fundamental reasons why clients start aligning or choose practices, because they've got a common purpose in mind, and you really do get better quality clients if you understand your own why. But also, it's an opportunity to refine your purpose, strengthen your team, and just generally improve happiness and reduce stress in the workplace. If everybody's pulling in the same direction, and as directors, you're behind a common purpose, that really does reinforce the team quite considerably. And as a result, you're designing healthier buildings, greater comfort, higher productivity in those buildings because they're healthier, and a kind of a greater feeling of wellness. And again, as professionals, that should be something you're looking to do, not only design beautiful looking buildings or different looking buildings, but ones that genuinely benefit the people or the groups of people that live or work in those. There is also, emotionally, there's a professional responsibility and a challenge ahead of all architects going forwards. REBA 2030 has been talked about in great detail and will continue to do so. It makes sense to a lot of architects. Architects declare that movement, again, is fundamentally behind better material usage and efficiency and more responsible design. And then we've got, country-wide commitments like carbon neutrality by 2050. Again, as I said, Europe have signed up to that, the UK have signed up to that. And again, doing our professional bit to meet that is our kind of our responsibility. And those that get behind it and understand that building by building, they will get there. We'll really start making a big change for the wider benefit of your community and for your clients. One of the other big benefits, particularly, I was going to say particularly if you're a business owner, but that's not necessarily the case. I think for our individual architects, whether you're working for a big company, a little company, where you own a big company or a little company, the opportunity here as part of low energy building design is one of education and upskilling. And the fact that you guys are on this call right now means that you understand that education and filling your knowledge gaps is is key to bettering yourselves is great. And hands up, you know, anybody that says they know it all in this area is straight out lying, and you should miss them. You should steer clear of them by quite a wide berth, because all of us, whether you're an architect, whether you're a structural engineer, whether you're an independent energy consultant, whether you're a project manager, whether you're a builder, everybody involved in building design has to learn, and we're in a really steep learning curve point now, and for the rest of the decade it's going to be tricky, but certainly the next few years as things ramp up, regulations tighten and client desire rapidly increases for buildings like this. So there's a huge opportunity to learn and improve ourselves. There's an opportunity, as I've talked about many times, to improve the actual design process, become more efficient at what we're doing, ingrain better sustainable design into our building designs rather than treating it as a bolt-on. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this term about being a sponge, not a rock. And this metaphor between, don't be afraid of absorbing information, being honest about what you don't know. Don't be a rock. Don't be impenetrable. Don't pretend you know it all. And look out for other like-minded sponges to either join your staff or to work with. And the big opportunity here again as well for all of us is to, as architects, is to increase your fees, but also to attract better staff. If you're looking for a new job as well as an individual architect, the better educated and better skilled you have in this area, the more desirable you'll be as well for new practices. So better and more profitable customers. I think this one for me is really important. We're chasing the same thing as architects here as well. We all want better, more aligned, more understanding, and ultimately more profitable customers. None of us want to be working with people who just don't get how we work, don't get sustainability, if we were passionate about that, we'd like to think that we're working with people with a similar outlook. And invariably, because those people are aligned in purpose, they often spend a bit more money, and then they can truly see the value in what you're offering, which leads to high levels of profitability. So it allows you to attract better clients by promoting sustainability in your marketing and doing case studies, delighting customers, with better knowledge, better designs, so they're both beautiful and functional, and retaining those customers, being able to retain those customers for more aspects of your design. If you can show competency at the first stage, they may well stick with you for the second stage. If you can show competency there and there's the right design team and you're enthusiastic and you get the work done, they might stay with you for the third stage. And it goes on and on and on. So when you talk about customer value, that hopefully, if you're doing it in the right way, that should be more and more profitable, and you can get some great clients who really stick with you, and your business does well, and the project is an ultimate success. And all being well, they tell 10 of their friends also, and the same thing happens 10 times over. The other, as I say, the other benefit that I talked about as well was awesome staff. Staff and teammates make businesses go round. None of us can succeed at the moment acting, or for the foreseeable future acting as an island. And one of the things that I talked about recently, I've talked about over and over again, is breaking out of this kind of silo thinking and relying on collaboration and trust, high levels of trust between your staff and your team and the wider design team. And I think the great thing about doing more sustainable work at the moment, particularly if you're looking at attracting younger staff, is you attract, really enthusiastic staff. You're clear about, what your projects are about. So you attract better and more aspirational staff, guys and girls with, better design ideas. Even maybe they might not be fresh out of college or university, but even, architects that have been in the game for longer, maybe, more senior staff are joining you. But again, your purposes are aligned, and they will just be better staff for you, better teammates that will stick around for longer and have far better ideas. And again, as I say, a lot of this comes back to purpose. And if you have, as I've found out with my practice, if you have staff which are keen to learn, if you attract these, let's call them sponges, your practice will benefit so much quicker than competitors or other people that you're working with. Because if everybody is willing to absorb information and share that information internally, your knowledge just goes up and up and up and up so quickly, and it becomes a kind of a perpetual machine. And also, finally, to remember here that great staff attract more great staff. If you can, you know, I don't know how good your staff is generally across the board, but if you're looking to grow your practice and get places, if you can attract some great staff members, those in turn will make it easier to attract more and better staff also. So marketing and sales, improved and more relevant popular case studies. Of course, if you break into sustainable projects or you've got projects with a sustainable angle in them, I'm not talking about a whole fully blown eco house, passive house, you know, off the grid type building, but even if there are elements for your existing projects, you know, find a good copywriter, you know, big those up. If you want to go down the sustainable route, you know, the benefits of showing people that you've done something is a foot in the door, and just start talking about it legitimately, obviously without lying or falsifying information. But generally speaking, most people are coming across sustainable projects. So build particular case studies around those, show other people the benefits, and obviously that improves your chance of marketing and finding those better clients. Of course, the marketing opportunities, you know, higher desirability in the buildings that you're designing will attract you know, better clients as well. And with those things, with better case studies, with better marketing, with kind of relevant low energy buildings, there's greater chance of winning awards as well, if that's something that's important for you. You know, increasingly REBA 2030 is a framework. REBA's saying, look, you can't win awards with us if you don't follow this sustainability matrix, if they're not low energy buildings, if you don't focus on embodied carbon and water efficiency usage. So you're going to start closing the door on winning awards. And the flip side is, if you embrace sustainability and embrace sustainable design, you've got a load of great stuff to talk about, and the awards will, you know, you've got far higher chance of winning something in the short, medium, and long term. And of course, I've mentioned peer recognition there. We all love, you know, being patted on the back by other practices that we know or other teammates. And, you know, there's a lot of kudos around being involved in a practice that you know, is putting it out there, doing something with sustainability. And of course, if you're winning awards, that doesn't go amiss, particularly if you promote them well. And that peer recognition is a massive benefit. You know, professionally, people in a similar role to you, it's always great to get that recognition. And again, I guess that comes back to this kind of softer benefit for you guys as well. And then finally, I think this is almost finally, before we just do some takeaways here, growth and profitability. If you get all these things right, if you embrace sustainability in your practice, find great staff, market low energy projects, there's a real opportunity here to create or retain a massive competitive advantage in the field. I've mentioned this before, I think a couple of webinars ago. Don't for a second believe that your perceived competitors are streets ahead of you on sustainable design. They are not, I can promise you. If we take a cross-section of the architect practices that we deal with, everybody is scrabbling around to learn more, to you know, get the right design team members on board. And you know, some practices only have 1 or 2 projects that genuinely they could market as low energy buildings. So it's not too late to create that competitive advantage and to learn and to get on top of the pile. And so do bear that in mind. And I say you can quickly differentiate yourself if you want to make sure that's something that you do. And ultimately, that's what successful businesses do. They differentiate themselves and create their own unique selling points. And by doing that, you add more perceived and actual value to your clients. You know, if sustainability, as I say, is very relevant, you're able to figure out what buildings cost less to build, perform better. And that's really, really valuable design advice for your client and the wider design team. And the net result of all of this is the ability to charge higher fees because you're driving that value to your client, and increase profitability and opportunities for the business to grow and to take staff on and to expand your team. So wrapping up, just some kind of key takeaways here. There is, I mean, I've gone through a large amount of benefits there. There is a wide range of client benefits. Don't just focus on financial. There are emotional and financial benefits across the board, both for clients and for architects. The big ones, being green, saving money, and lowering long-term running costs are, let's say, the kind of the key benefits. As I say, there are numerous ones, but those are big financial and emotional ones that you can focus on. And your understanding of these will allow you to sell better and more profitably to better clients. So fully understanding the suite of benefits allows you to pick up on what particular clients deem particularly important and press their buttons and get them over the line. There's a wide range of benefits to architects and building teams within practices, the ability to get better staff, to redefine potentially what your purpose is and understand your why, which can have a huge ripple effect through the practice in very positive ways. And then finally, staying relevant. We all want to stay relevant. None of us want to be mothballed and forgotten about by our clients. And I would say ultimately staying relevant is one of the key benefits, again, for overall growth. And that's it, folks. That's us wrapped up. Remember, if you've got any questions for us in the last kind of 5-10 minutes, feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions. We will take questions.